I don't know.
That's pretty good. I like that.
I feel like they'd probably make weird noise like yeah. That's like that's what I think about, like dinosaurs make those noises. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe that's not true.
It's kind of like a goose honking. It's kind of what I imagine it, but like 10 times, a million times bigger.
The decibels on that thing.
Let's do this. Welcome to It Takes Two!
I'm Clarissa, the couples therapist.
And I'm Charles, the marketing professor, talking shop on relationships, mental health, and...
what really is anxiety?
We'll cover the question, what various forms does anxiety take, how it impacts daily life, and most importantly, what can be done about it.
We will also be sharing a fun date idea and connection question so that you can take your relationship with yourself to the next level.
Ooh.
So make sure to stay tuned till the end for some self-love.
Oh, mixing it up today. Loving it. Clarissa, check this out. 1 in 5 adults under the age of 30 who are in a serious relationship met through online dating. The number halves for people over 30 with only 1 in 10. Anyways, a new study in the Journal of Computers and Human Behavior sought to identify whether meeting online or meeting in person led to a more satisfying and compatible relationship. The first interesting point to note from the study was selection biases, the dominant one being age. The researchers found that long-term relationships starting online are likely going to increase over time. That makes sense. I mean, it's like a pretty obvious trend. But what about the quality of these relationships? The researchers coined the term the online dating effect and found that today, people who met through online dating reported less satisfying and less stable marriages than those who met in traditional ways.
Whoa.
Yeah. However, before you log off on your dating life, the overall outcomes on average were still of high quality overall. You know, another interesting note on this is the stigma surrounding online dating and dating apps, which could be the source of some of the results, said the researchers. Online daters experience more societal marginalization. Listen to some of these quotes from the participants. I did not tell my parents that's how we met. I feel like there's such a stigma around it, that hookup culture and, oh, why were you on there? Were you just trying to hook up with guys? That's not what I was doing, but I didn't want to have to defend it. Next one. It still doesn't get the same respect or oohs and ahs as people who will be like, I met my husband when I was in college and we've been together ever since. It just seems like a lesser relationship. Do you feel like that's true, that if you've been meeting online, it's more marginalized?
I think that people do react that way, like maybe judgy and don't take it as seriously or aren't as excited or yeah.
Yeah, it's wild because online dating has been around for a very long time. I mean, I think the early 2010s is really when it picked up steam. So we've been in over a decade, but online dating still kind of has this weird stigma around it.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting because I think it's like, I wonder if it would be more common to meet that way than any other way now.
Yeah, no, the fact that it was 1 in 5, I thought it'd be more like 1 in 3.
Yeah, that's true.
So I share that surprise with you.
Yeah.
That it's not more. Anyway, one final explanation for the results that I found particularly fascinating was the idea that because of the size of dating pool that online dating reaches, an individual may be less likely to remain in a relationship when challenges arise because they feel like they have so many options they could return to.
That is really fascinating.
Yeah.
That's just so interesting.
Oh, I've got plenty of options. So if you're not exactly how I expect you to be, I can just go back to Tinder or whatever, Grindr,
I wonder,
and find more people.
Yeah, so maybe like a less committed to like sticking it out through the process and like giving people who maybe are flawed at first like a more of a chance.
Yeah.
So if you don't put like your best, and honestly, like I actually have heard that a lot. Like the pressure is very high to like create the perfect profile, and then the pressure to like make a good impression. And I wonder if it's just all stemming from that feeling.
Like there's so many people you could choose from. And so you really have to be the cream of the crop. It's interesting that online dating has become a marketing problem, a branding problem.
For
because if your profile sucks, you ain't getting a date.
Okay, I was gonna say for who? For the person or for the apps or whatever?
Nobody swiping right if you've got a pixelated photo.
That's true.
Or if your copy on your description isn't, a home run.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's so many other people available. It's wild to think about. Well, let's move on to the primary topic. Before we do, let's listen to our disclaimer.
This podcast only provides information. It's not a viable replacement for a therapy session. If you need help or have an emergency, contact your local mental health authority. Our hosts are experts on mental health. Many of our guests are too. This podcast does not provide expert advice. It's just entertainment, baby. Dates, and places have changed. This podcast should never replace real therapy.
All right, listeners, today is the first of a series that we are creating on the topic of anxiety. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the United States. Census Bureau data, which importantly only includes data on ages 18 and older, shows that almost 20% of the population has an anxiety disorder, and that number only continues to grow. Clarissa, that is 40 million people. That number is eye-popping. But let me give this to help everyone wrap their heads around how many people that actually is. If you took every single man, woman, and child in the following states and combined them, you'd reach the number of people in the United States that have an anxiety disorder. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Mississippi, Utah, Hawaii, Nebraska, Rhode Island, Vermont, Nevada, South Dakota, Wyoming, Delaware, Arkansas, Alaska, Montana, West Virginia, New Mexico, Idaho, Iowa, Maine, North Dakota, Kansas, New Hampshire, Connecticut.
Wait, everyone, if you combine the total population of all those states,
every man, woman, and child in all of those states
is the population, the amount of people who have anxiety in the U.S.
Correct. And that's diagnosed. We're not even talking about children with anxiety, and we're not even talking about people who go undiagnosed, which there are a lot out there.
Many.
Wild. Okay? It is rampant. It is a very, very common mental health disorder.
Wow.
And it's not talked about enough. It's one of the reasons we actually started this podcast was to normalize what a lot of people feel very lonely in experiencing. But guys, think about 22 states, all of those populations combined. That's how many people in the US have this one single mental health disorder.
Wild.
It's incredible. Some celebrities with anxiety to also further normalize this. Clarissa, you want to read through some of these?
Sure. Emma Stone, Kristen Bell, Selena Gomez, Johnny Depp, Ariana Grande, Oprah Winfrey, David Beckham, Michael Phelps, Adele, Kendall Jenner, Lady Gaga, Kristen Stewart, Prince Harry, John Mayer, Zayn, Ryan Reynolds, Carson Daly, Leanne Rimes. Whoa.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Oh, Stephen Colbert is on that list too.
Missy Elliott.
Holy smokes. I didn't even read the whole list that you said. Or are showing. And then also, I don't even think that that's obviously every celebrity.
Oh,
that's
no.
just like ones that were at the top of the search, probably.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. And what I find fascinating is it's not just actors or actresses. It's, I mean, you said Michael Phelps. That is the most decorated gold medalist of all time.
Yeah.
The greatest athlete, arguably, of all time has anxiety. David Beckham, professional soccer player.
Show host.
Yep, show. Yeah, could you imagine Stephen Colbert and some of these other hosts?
Carson Daly,
before every show, they are likely experiencing a spike in cortisol and stress and anxiety. It's incredible that they do this every single day.
It is. It just, how?
Right.
Like the fact that they take the time to, just still do their job, even though they have something like anxiety.
Yeah. Now get this, Clarissa. Only 37% of those 40 million people receive any kind of treatment. Wow. That means there are over 25 million people at least living with an untreated anxiety disorder.
Just white knuckling through life.
Why? Clarissa, why? Why?
I think like a lot of people, I think, just don't know that it could actually help. Like, it's like they seem like, oh, it's just like a helpless thing that it just is. Like, I can't do anything about it. There's nothing that will change it, kind of thing. I think it's a big one. I think people just think, oh, it's stress. I'm just stressed. It's okay.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some medication aversion.
Yeah.
People don't want to take anxiety medications.
So they don't know that there's like actually other things that you can do to manage anxiety without meds.
Yeah, they probably doubt the efficacy or effectiveness of therapy.
For sure.
Yeah, any other reasons that you think why somebody wouldn't at least try to treat anxiety?
Guess you could always say like shame or embarrassment or like uncomfortable with it. But I don't know. It's so widely talked about. So I feel like that maybe just be mostly in like male population where like emotions aren't as like celebrated.
I could see that.
Like fear especially is not that celebrated.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we are not going to dive into male form anxiety because I think it does take on a slightly different shape and form. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But a lot of what men normalize as normal behavior is actually anxiety. Case in point, when I walk into a room in public and I'm checking every exit and I'm looking for potential threats, like that's not viewed as an anxiety behavior, but that absolutely is an anxious behavior. That's not what a neuronormative brain probably is experiencing when they walk into a safe public space.
Yeah, but I'm guessing a lot of men do that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of men are like, well, it's not anxiety. That's not anxiety. That's just me being cautious and prepared and safe and stuff. It's like, well, I don't know. Let's get into it. So nearly 1/2 of those diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with an anxiety disorder.
That's wild.
Yeah. Do you see that a lot in your clientele?
Yeah, I think there's definitely, it's like called comorbidity, where like two things naturally happen more often together, like anxiety and depression. So yeah, I definitely see a lot of it. I think it's like pretty common for sure. But I would say, I mean, I'm guessing the stat is saying that like more than half of people with depression have anxiety, not
Correct.
People with anxiety have depression.
Correct.
Yeah, definitely that's very accurate. You can tell.
That's still surprising to me though, because I feel like depression is a very low energy. I mean, depressed, right? Depression, like low energy, whereas anxiety feels very high energy, very like peaking. So that I found that counterintuitive.
Yeah, but I think that if you're peaking a lot, like you could also probably like crash from that, I guess.
Yeah.
Or people with depression probably experience anxiety of like, what if this never ends? Or like, what if I can't get out of this situation?
Oh, okay. So maybe some of the existentialism, they have a lot of anxiety about what they're ruminating on.
That's my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So what causes anxiety? What's the source of it, the root of it? We know that anxiety disorders develop from a complex set of risk factors, including genetics, brain chemistry, personality, and life events. So Clarissa, would you give us a little bit more technical detail on what anxiety is? And yeah.
Sure. So anxiety disorders include a lot of features of like fear and then also behavior disturbances is what they call it, which is like panic or maybe your mind not feeling like right in the right place. In the DSM-5, which is our like diagnostic criteria booklet, it's like Bible, I guess you could say.
I was gonna say, when you said booklet, I think of like this. Look at this chonker.
Like this.
It is a textbook sized diagnostic book. Anyway.
Yes. Sorry, the booklet was inaccurate, but I found this is really interesting. It says fear is the emotional response to real or perceived imminent threat, whereas anxiety is the anticipation of future threat. Obviously, these two states overlap, but they also differ, with fear more often associated with surges of the flight or fight response and thoughts of immediate danger and escape behaviors, and anxiety more often associated with muscle tension and vigilance in preparation for future danger and cautious or avoidant behaviors. Sometimes the level of fear or anxiety is reduced by pervasive avoidance behaviors. Panic attacks feature prominently within the anxiety disorders as particular type of fear response. Panic attacks are not limited to anxiety disorders, but rather can be seen in other mental disorders as well.
Okay, so it's less about, oh, there's a bear right there, I'm experiencing fear. Anxiety is, there may be a bear where I'm going, and so I'm going to be vigilant and stressed and tense just in case a bear shows up.
Yeah. And it's still like, the anxiety is probably still coming from whatever you're afraid of, but it's the future risk of that.
Okay, so let's use social anxiety maybe as a quick example. So if I'm going to go out tonight with friends and I'm beginning to feel that fear of going out, or that hesitancy or that trepidation, that obviously I'm not in a social setting, so why am I experiencing that fear?
Likely afraid of some type of scenario that's going to happen when you get there, and then ruminating on that, and like your brain is like working yourself up about it.
Yeah, and it's a physiological response, right? Like there's a physical mechanism dumping neurotransmitters into your body.
Definitely. So in the diagnosis for generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, which is like the overall anxiety disorder, they have different criteria that you have to meet. And so what it has to look like when your fear is like dumping into your brain is basically you have to be experiencing 3 or more of these following things, which is like restlessness or feeling keyed up or on edge, being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, irritability, muscle tension, and sleep disturbance. So physiological in the sense of like your brain convinces your body, mind, everything that it's like has something to worry about, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's so critical in understanding that toxic positivity mindset just does not help with anxiety. You can't just be like, oh, calm down, everything's fine. And then your brain is like, oh, chill, okay, cool, we're getting rid of all these neurotransmitters. You know, like we're just going to get rid of all the amygdala firing, the sympathetic nervous system going haywire. Cool, you told me to calm down. I completely believe you and my body's cool with it. Like, no, that's absurd.
Yeah, and I mean, it even says like the individual finds it difficult to control the worry. So like if you were able to be like, no, don't worry about that, that's okay, and you're able to do that, then that's not anxiety. Like that was something that you were experiencing, but like a fear or an anxiety, but not an anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Right. Like it has to be hard to control, hard to get rid of, and then like cause significant distress or impairment in your social, occupational, or other important areas of your life.
Yeah. Can I share a story about when you were experiencing some anxiety? And
Sure.
Okay, so
I don't know which one.
So we were at this person's house, and you were experiencing some anxiety, and they could tell because you kind of, I mean, you weren't like having a full blown panic attack or anything. You were just kind of like sitting there focusing, regulating, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And you were trying to just regulate and manage that moment. And then somebody who was there noticed you and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And you said, "Oh yeah, I'm just experiencing some anxiety." And their response was, "Come on, just believe in yourself."
Yeah.
How did you respond to that? It was like shaming you for not.
Yeah.
Like when you
just believe in yourself, girl. Like it was so. I when that happened, I was like, you have no idea how badly I wish that worked.
Right? Oh yeah, I'm just gonna believe in myself. Okay, everything's fine.
And that is just not like that's just not how it works for anyone. But yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of generalized anxiety disorder, let's go through some of the subcategories briefly, just to touch on them. And then in future episodes related to this topic, we can dive deeper into these. But I just want to introduce these subcategories because anxiety does not look all the same to every person in every situation. There's a lot of stigma and stereotype that surrounds these diagnoses, and they actually get very nuanced and very different. They can manifest in very different ways. So again, generalized anxiety disorder, this affects 6.8 million adults, or about 3% of the US population, yet only 43% of them are receiving treatment. Again, that's wild to me. Clarissa, this one might hit a little different too. Women are twice as likely to be affected as men, and GAD often co-occurs with major depression.
Wild.
And as we go through these, there's only one of these subcategories where women are not twice as likely to be affected as men.
But what? It's just like occurs the same
amount?
It's
right,
not like
where it's
they're
like instead of a
less.
2-to-1, it's a 1-to-1.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is wild. Okay. All right, moving on. Panic disorder affects 6 million adults, or 2.7% of the US population. Also, women twice as likely to be affected as men. Next, social anxiety disorder. This one is SAD. The acronym for it is SAD. I just blows my mind. Anyway, it affects 15 million adults, or 7% of the US population. And this is the one where it is equally common among men and women, and it typically begins around age 18, according to a 2007 ADAA survey.
13 or 18?
Age 13. And then 36% of people with social anxiety disorder report experiencing symptoms for 10 or more years before seeking help.
Whoa. This is actually the number one thing I see in any of the teens that are coming into my clinic is usually social anxiety.
Do you think that's because of bullying or social media? What do you think is the reason for that?
I think it's the adjustment from before age, like birth to 12, your whole world is your family. It's like where you get your security and your validation and your identity. And then when you get to your teenage years, like 13 and up, you start incorporating that external source of all of those things in your friends. So there's like a natural shift in focus on friendships and people at school that you care about. And so I just think it's a hard transition to go from like, thinking maybe you're normal or fine or cool, and then you're all of a sudden around like junior high and high school and just a wider amount of people and having to like adjust all that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Social status becomes a currency around that age.
Yeah.
Whereas before it's just like playmates.
Yeah, but you also don't have like you're not like confident in, because you're going through like puberty, so all the hormones, like you're not confident and secure with yourself to like rely on that. Like you can't really tell like a 13-year-old like, don't worry about like their opinions, like they're not going to be your friends in 10 years anyway, because it's like their entire world. And then it's like they don't have that confidence to be like, I can gain my validation from myself, you know?
Right. That makes so much sense. Well, and we will for sure have an episode on this one coming up. Next is specific phobias. Bet you didn't know that. That phobias, arachnophobia, fear of spiders, agoraphobia, like all these other ones, they are considered anxiety disorders.
Yeah.
Interesting. Again, especially according to the DSM-5. Specific phobias affect 19.3 million adults, or about 9% of the U.S. population. And again, women are twice as likely to be affected than men. Symptoms typically begin in childhood. The average age of onset is 7 years old. Wow. That one blows my mind.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
7. Wow.
Okay, so those are the subcategories we're going to touch on today. We might dive into future ones, but overall, I really wanted to highlight this comparison between stress and anxiety. And Clarissa, I would love for you to expound on this. Stress is the subject. Everyone experiences stress and anxiety at one time or another. Anxiety is an emotion that every human being experiences. Think about going into a job interview or starting college for the first day ever. There is a natural anxiety about what could happen, and that's not a disorder. However, the difference between them is that stress is a response to a threat in a situation, whereas anxiety is a reaction to stress. I'll say that again. The difference between stress and anxiety is that stress is a response to a threat in a situation, and anxiety is a reaction to stress. What do you make of that?
Anxiety seems like the overdrive of stress, like stress gone wrong kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like
Stress gone wrong. Yeah,
it's like it is normal to experience stress and anxiety, but it seems like an abundance of stress about an upcoming situation or threat is anxiety, but like just like the disorder or the dysfunction is probably the part that really makes the two apart, I guess.
Yeah, it when I read this, what came to my mind is, anxiety is not what you experience when you are facing something you are afraid of. Mm-hmm. Anxiety is a reaction to being stressed about what you may experience in the future.
Yeah.
So fear is present, stress is present, kind of. I mean, obviously you can stress about future events, but anxiety is anticipation.
Yes.
I thought that was incredible. So what can somebody do to treat any of these, again, 40-something% that aren't getting treatment? You know, what kind of treatments are available to people to help with their anxiety?
Yeah, obviously I'm going to put a plug for therapy. I think
of course.
Therapy is a really great place to talk about anxiety. The thing that you should be doing with that, though, is like learning how to regulate or shift your mindset around the anxiety or fears, not necessarily just talking about them. Like, I think sometimes people go to talk therapy and they just only just like share like maybe what's going on or whatnot, but not necessarily learn how to like rewrite the cycle and pattern of the anxiety. So,
well, just real quick, and that makes sense again, because if anxiety is a response to stress management techniques could also improve anxiety outcomes, right?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And then you could go further into like other anxiety techniques too. But the top like therapies that you could say are like the most beneficial to anxiety, I think that these aren't it's not limited to these
Sure.
therapies. These are just ones that are really commonly like used with anxiety. So it's
And research backed as well.
Yes,
like
yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Evidence-based.
empirical. Yeah.
yeah. So there's data and studies done to show that this does help anxiety. So some of these treatments are CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, exposure therapy, or sometimes seen as exposure response prevention, and then acceptance and commitment therapy, which is sometimes read as ACT.
Gotcha. When somebody is looking to do therapy, a lot of therapists will highlight a specialization for anxiety, and these are a lot of the treatments they'll use. Yeah.
Yeah. These, or they might have found some other ones as well but most of the time therapists don't just stick to like just one. Like if somebody is doing any one of these, they're also probably bringing in some from others too.
That makes sense.
So like if you don't see any of these on the list and the person still specializes in anxiety, you can probably still give them a try and they might still be beneficial.
And just referencing episode 11, where we talked about whether, what makes therapy effective, 30% of it was the therapeutic alliance, which is the relationship the therapist has with the client. And then 15% of it, which is a sizable amount, are the techniques and treatments that we are talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so Clarissa, maybe somebody's not ready to go to therapy and they want to try managing it on their own. What are some treatments or tools or resources that they can do before starting therapy to help manage their anxiety?
A common technique for managing anxiety would be deep breathing. This is just to help regulate your autonomic system.
Sure.
And so with deep breathing, a common one would be 4-7-8, which is 4 count breath in, hold for 7, exhale for 8.
Okay.
I think that one's like very effective and easy to remember. But then we learned another one at our vocal
coach.
Yeah, from our vocal coach at Voice Lessons. And that is to put a couple fingers on your forehead and using your thumb, plug one nostril, whichever one is by your thumb, and then you breathe in and then exhale with your mouth, like sigh. And then you use like your pinky or your other ring finger to close the other nostril and you inhale. Exhale with your mouth. And then you push your nose up from the tip.
So you look like a little piggy.
Yep. And you take a deep breath from both nostrils. And exhale with your mouth.
I love that one. I feel like for whatever reason, plugging one nostril and then when you go to the middle one, it just feels like you get
a huge breath.
Gigantic amount of air.
Yeah. And it's just really good for like panic or like if you feel like you can't breathe in any sense of the way with anxiety. So deep breathing would be a great practice to take up.
Research based.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, has a physiological reaction, cause and effect in your body when you do deep breathing.
Yes. The next tool or resource to help with anxiety would be mindfulness. Obviously, you've heard of like meditation and stuff. And I think guided meditations, those are great. Those are also tools and resources. But the type of mindfulness that I'm referencing today would be being present. And what I mean by being present is if you notice your brain fixating on the past, like often it's like a past conversation or something you said or something that happened. Or if you notice your brain going to the future about like something upcoming or the anticipation of something, then I want you to exercise cutting that out and just focusing on what's in front of you. And so when you do that, you're just focusing on what's in your control, what's going on right now, and not letting your brain wander to the past or future. And by doing that, you're also needing to accept what's outside of your control. So it's okay to let things be outside of your control and to just accept that that is what they are. And then if it's helpful, I think you can add like, what can I do right now? Like what's in my control right now for any given stress or problem instead of, like I said, wandering off in the past or future.
Yeah, I do that thinking about past conversations all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I really struggle with that. I
Yeah.
will replay entire, 20, 30-minute conversations in my head.
Yeah.
Even when I'm working or doing it, it's just like, bzzz, I shouldn't have said that. Bzzz, oh no, what do they think of me after I said that thing? You know what I mean? It's just
totally.
And so to interrupt that and just be present, it's hard.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. My favorite saying, and I don't know, I've told you I'll probably get this like tattooed somewhere. I don't know if we like just came up with it on ourselves. I don't know, but it's been helpful for my anxiety is just saying all that exists is right now. Essentially practicing the fact that scientifically nothing really exists other than what's right in front of you. And so that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. The arrow of time only progresses forward, and we are constant riders on that vehicle, unable to go ahead of it or behind. Mm-hmm. I love that. I think that's such a beautiful, I might get that tattooed too. Maybe we'll get matching tats. Okay. What's next?
Next up for a tool or resource to managing your anxiety would be exposures. What I mean by that is exposing yourself to your fears. So
Sounds
a lot
terrible.
Right? I'm not necessarily saying, oh, if you're afraid of spiders, just pick up a spider or something like that. But I am saying if you're afraid of spiders and it keeps you away from like doing your yard work, don't stop doing your yard work. You know what I mean? But more than that, it's just really easy to say, okay, to manage my anxiety, I'm just going to avoid the thing that causes me anxiety. So what this could look like is a lot of times like teens drop out of going to school and then they just go to like online school. I actually see that a ton just because they're avoiding managing the social anxiety and instead they're just like going around about. But then that teaches your brain. Okay. But then that teaches your brain that, see, that thing was scary and you did the right thing for yourself by avoiding it. But then it makes the fear bigger and more scary versus if you expose yourself to the fear and then when you do that, you train your brain and mind to regulate itself, you have a better likelihood of actually overcoming anxiety instead of it like being a perpetual problem.
That makes sense. And it's so hard to, in the moment, believe in that process.
Yeah.
But it makes sense logically when you're viewing it objectively. Yeah, if I continue to avoid, of course my brain is going to tell me that I did the right thing because I didn't get hurt.
Yep.
And so to say, well, hey, I'm going to do it anyway. And then to almost process after the event and tell your brain, hey, look, I did the thing and I was still safe.
Yep. Basically, just like you can't let your brain pull a fast one on you and be like, great job, you know, we're safe now. And then now all of a sudden your anxiety is so out of control because you avoided so many things. And it's just like a never ending spiral.
Yeah. I feel like journaling is a good addition to this resource because putting that hand to paper and writing down, I was safe when I did the thing that was scary, I think would really help build that stronger neural pathway that, hey, you know what? I am okay.
Yeah, for sure. In relation to that, something that would be really good with exposures is creating what's called a fear ladder.
Oh, yeah. Clarissa, tell us about the fear ladder.
The fear ladder is where on like a piece of paper or a whiteboard or your laptop or something, you draw out a ladder with, I would say, up to 10 steps on the ladder. And then I usually have clients leave that for a sec and create a separate list of up to 10 things that you are afraid of or cause anxiety. And then you rank those. So you have a list that is unranked and then you begin putting those on the fear ladder. So maybe you would choose one off the list and be like, oh, this is number 1. But then you go to look back to your list and you go, actually, I'm less afraid of this one than I put on the number 1. So I'm going to bump that one up to number 2 and put that one underneath it. And then, similar process. Like if number 10, you're like, actually, I'm way more afraid of this one, I'll put it up. So you kind of shift them all to fit from least to most afraid or least to most anxiety response. And that would be what is called your fear ladder. And then what you do is you expose yourself in small doses, starting at the bottom step. And so really you're just taking baby steps essentially to exposing yourself to your fear. So you're not trying to bite off more than you can chew.
Sure.
Essentially. And you're giving yourself a higher chance of really learning how to regulate your anxiety by starting somewhere small. And then what it does is it does snowball effect, where as you get to like your top fear, you should be doing pretty well with managing it. But then also what it does on a grand picture scale is in general reduce your anxiety symptoms and how frequent they are.
I like that, because if you check off like a 4 or a 5, and then you're starting to experience anxiety, and you almost pull up that ladder in your mind, you're like, hold up a second, this is like a 2 or 3 on my ladder, I'm good.
Yes, yeah.
Something like that. I will agree that if you jump to like a 9 or 10, it might be a bad idea. I think a 9 or 10 for me is if I see a spider and then it disappears and I can't find it. I can't imagine like capturing a spider, looking at it and being like, okay, go run away. I'll turn around and not watch you leave, and then turn around and the spider's gone. I don't think I could handle that. That would be terrifying. I'm just convinced that spider will come hunt me down while I'm not paying attention. Yeah!
Oh my gosh. What's funny about what your fear ladder would be though, Charles, is that like most people's top fear ladder would be like public speaking, but I feel like that's like number 1, or it's not even on your fear ladder.
Yeah, fun fact, more people are afraid of public speaking than people are afraid of death.
Yeah.
And the like how people, it's not just the number, they perceive death as less scary than public speaking. That just blows my mind.
That does.
I mean, I do a lot of public speaking. I'm a professor. I'm a business presenter by trade. So like I've obviously overcome that natural fear of public speaking, but it still just blows my mind that some people are more afraid of that than literally dying.
Yeah. That is so wild.
Number 1 phobia too, if I'm not mistaken, is...
Yeah, I think it is public speaking.
I think so.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, 1-2 combo. Go to therapy with Clarissa, and then I'll do public speaking coaching. We got you.
We got you.
All right, getting back on track. Let's do a few more anxiety tools.
Yeah, let's go through these a little bit more quickly for you. Next up for a tool or resource to managing your anxiety is to focus on existing versus resisting your anxiety symptoms. So anxiety is typically a paradoxical emotion in the sense where if you try and like stuff it or just be like, it doesn't bother me, like just kind of try and corral it and ignore it or push it down, usually it's not going to go away.
And that makes sense because, again, if anxiety is an effect of stress, if you are stressing about having anxiety and stressing about making your anxiety go away, you'll just get more anxiety.
Pretty much. Yeah. So when you, and it's like when you resist your symptoms, then those symptoms can sometimes grow because you're tensing up and causing more stress to a system that's already stressed. So what I would suggest trying is to try allowing and existing in that anxiety. So it's essentially saying like when you start to notice the feelings or symptoms, saying like, I'm experiencing anxiety right now. Like, that's interesting. Like, what are some of the things I'm noticing? instead of being like, no, I don't want to experience this. I don't want to experience. Oh no, does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's just allowing it to be there and just watching it instead of judging it or being like, no.
Yes.
Oh, I'm experiencing anxiety. I'm feeling really anxious right now. I actually experienced this New Year's almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't ever have panic attacks, but it was like one of my first or second or third panic attacks in my entire life. I started just having it at a New Year's party.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down and just being like, oh, my heart is pounding through my chest. I can't breathe right now. I'm having a panic attack. Huh, this is interesting. Like just like allowing it, like giving it permission to be there. And I was able to move through it and manage it pretty well.
Yeah. I think the other reason why it works is because it does probably give you a higher chance to like breathe better and remain calm and relaxed versus just tensing up and causing it's almost like when somebody gets in a car accident and like somebody's experiencing shock. What do people do? They like put blankets on them. They like shield their vision. Like they take care of somebody in shock because you don't want to stress that person out more.
Yeah.
And so they don't let that person do anything else other than just be there.
I love that example.
And that's kind of like what you're doing for your anxiety. If you're trying to do other things or resist it or be like, I'm okay, we're not going to be good.
Yeah, the inverse analogy that came to mind is a grease fire. So if you're cooking with grease and the frying pan catches on fire, if you throw water on it to try and make the fire go out, that just makes it explode even more.
Crazy.
Wow. So don't throw water on your grease fire.
Yeah, there's actually like, we're speaking to a bunch of crowd of people with anxieties. Let's not talk about fire protocols.
When you're feeling anxiety, wrap yourself in blankets. That's the better way.
And just remain calm and just, I have anxiety right now.
Yeah, I allow it. Yeah.
It just is. Okay, next up for a tool resource to managing your anxiety. This one is going to probably surprise people that I'm recommending this because I did just say don't ignore your anxiety. But I think that a healthy distraction or a healthy use of distraction is actually really good for anxiety. And what that would probably look like is you're not distracting to avoid it. You're distracting to just regulate and delay any type of like having to deal with the situation until you're in a better mind space. So the way that I've used this in the past is I've had like really bad panic attacks from anxiety. And if I start to notice myself getting to the point of a panic attack, then sometimes I'll like pull out a phone game, like a phone video game.
Yeah. Just
to like focus on something different than the sheer panic of starting to have a panic attack. And then once I'm in a better place, then I'm usually able to say like, oh, like this is what I was worrying about or what started to like lead to that instead of trying to like solve it all up front.
That makes sense. It's more of an intervention or to interrupt the cycle.
Yes.
And then once that intervention or interruption has succeeded, then you can go to management and regulation.
Yes.
I like, what's your game? What, Extreme Makeover? Is that your phone game?
Yeah, it's like the Candy Crush mixed with like fashion with home design. Yeah.
Love it.
It's a little bit of all my favorite things, you know.
Yeah. I love that.
And there's no ads. Maybe that's why I like it. Is that game doesn't have any ads because they're the game that has all the ads on all the other games.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So I think that they're doing probably pretty well. But anyway.
You've done Sudoku as well.
Oh yeah. Sudoku like, just takes up all like your brain power and problem solving and stuff. But lately I've been like if I'm laying in bed and I'm starting to panic, then I'll like put an earbud and listen to like a book or things like that just to like not think about the thing that's worrying me. Because also like when you're going to bed, sleep is so important to managing your anxiety. So it's better to fall asleep and then just deal with what was stressing you out the next day.
Yeah. Sometimes if you've been fighting a battle for so long, it's better to just like step away from it and then pick it back up another time.
Totally. Last thing, the following tool or resource for anxiety is actually a podcast that I actually had another therapist friend recommend to me, and it's called the Anxiety Toolkit, and it's tools for OCD and anxiety, which we are going to do a podcast later on about OCD. But this podcast, a lot of OCD and anxiety management overlap. So this podcast covers so much of maybe what we've talked about just now of like different things that you can do. And it is their main focus in the podcast. So it's really, really great for people who experience that.
What a way to get a 2-for-1. So when you're feeling anxiety, pop in a headbutt to distract you and get great information to help you manage it once you've interrupted the cycle.
Yeah.
Heyo.
Another really good thing with that podcast would be to like save ones that maybe have tools that you want to use in the future when you are anxious or something, and then going back to would probably be really good.
Yeah. Well, I love that, Clarissa. Thank you so much. So, and those are, again, just going over a few of the tools and resources, a few of the categories. But again, just to recap some of the takeaways from today, we covered that 40 million people have anxiety, and that's not including children under 18. It affects women twice as often as men in general. And most, a sizable chunk, 40-ish% of people don't treat the anxiety, and that is influencing the quality of life. And so we covered some therapy treatments as well as some techniques and resources. And we hope that if you are experiencing anxiety, some of this information has helped you. But ultimately, if some of those tools and techniques aren't working, having a professional expert in a therapist help you is invaluable. Everything you experience in life goes through the filter of your mental health. And so, again, that stat that said 10 years, people spend 10 years with anxiety before they seek out treatment. That is so much lost time and loss of quality of life that you could interrupt with some therapeutic treatment now. So if you are experiencing anxiety symptoms, we really encourage you to try some of these tools and resources and possibly reach out to a specialist of therapy for anxiety. And with that, Clarissa, what is the connection question and date idea for this week?
The connection question is to ask yourself, if you were to have a fear ladder, what would be on that ladder and how would it look? So you can do the fear ladder exercise that we talked about just now and put it all together. And then the date idea is that once you have exposed yourself to the lowest level of fear, then you should take yourself out to like your favorite treat or activity or thing to do. I guess that's the same thing as activity. But basically treat yourself once you have done something really good for your mental health.
Treat yourself. Treat yourself. Yours would be shopping, yeah?
Oh.
100%.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If you want an excuse to go shopping, just expose yourself to something off your ladder.
I should.
There you go. I love it. All right. Well, this is Charles.
And Clarissa signing off.
Just remember, for things to get better,
For me and you,
it takes two.